Good evening, everyone. I'm Kara McCarty. I'm the Director of Curatorial here at Cooper Hewitt, and I'm delighted to welcome all of you here this evening. This is the last of the programs organized in conjunction with the exhibition Scraps, Fashion, Textiles, and Creative Reuse. And as a testament to the popularity of textiles, all of the programs have been sold out, and the exhibition has been immensely popular. In addition to all the beautiful works in the exhibition and the ingenious innovations, as well as genuine sense of humanity exuded by all three of the exhibition's designer entrepreneurs, the exhibition offered several revelations. For me, the most shocking was that that second only to oil, textile and apparel manufacturing is the most polluting industry in the world. It just doesn't seem to make sense. The exhibition can be an inspiring call to action. I assume you have all seen it, but if not, it closes April 23rd. On behalf of Cooper Hewitt, I want to extend a special thank you to Eileen Fisher, who very generously and enthusiastically supported Scraps and the accompanying public programming. Among Eileen's various initiatives, Eileen Fisher is continually thinking about the role of a company differently and empowering women, such as the recent partnering with Girls Who Code. Maybe we'll hear a little bit more about that in the discussion. Tonight's event, Closing the Cycle, Sustainable Fashion with Eileen Fisher and Patagonia, is an up-close discussion with two fashion leaders whose pioneering companies are at the forefront of the industry's sustainability movement. Eileen Fisher, who founded her namesake company in 1984, and Nellie Cohen, Patagonia's worn wear program manager, will talk about how their organizations have innovated the reuse of textiles in the production process and transformed closed cycle design into a profitable business model. Before the discussions begin, I want to suggest we do something called Turn and Talk. It's something that we occasionally do with our educators, and it's an icebreaker moment. It'll just take a couple minutes, but it's a really nice way to get to know new people, meet new people. So if you would just spend a couple minutes turning to the person next to you or behind you, someone you do not know, and just say hello and ask what you are hoping to get out of this evening's program. It might be a fun little exercise. Okay. Judging from my vantage point, it must say that did not take long at all. Sounds like you've all known each other. I haven't seen each other for a long time, but thank you. And now I'd like to proceed. I'd like to invite to the podium Susan Brown, Curator of Textiles here at Cooper Hewitt and co-curator of the exhibition Scraps with her colleague Matilda McQuaid. Susan will introduce tonight's speakers and moderate tonight's conversation. Thank you.
Hi, good evening. We are so lucky to be here this evening in conversation with Eileen Fisher and Nellie Cohen of Patagonia. In fact, there are 170 people on the waiting list for this program, so if you have a chair in the room, you are very lucky indeed. But that just shows how eager people are to have this conversation and to engage around the subject of waste in the fashion and textile industry. So in the Scraps exhibition, we addressed pre-consumer waste. That's all the waste that's generated in fiber production, textile production, and apparel manufacturing before clothing ever reaches the stores. But tonight, we're going to talk about what happens when a company decides to take responsibility for their clothes after they leave the store, even if they left the store 30 years ago. Patagonia has done this through a commitment to helping their customers care for and repair their clothes so that they can keep them as long as possible. Eileen Fisher is taking back their clothes and giving them a second life through reuse or remaking them into new products. So I'll introduce Nellie and Eileen. Each one of them will give a short presentation, and then we'll have a discussion, and at the end there'll be an opportunity for questions from the audience. Nellie Cohen has been working in Patagonia's environmental department for 7 years. With a degree in oceanography and a background in statistics, Nellie focuses on the environmental responsibility of products, quantifying and analyzing the impacts of the company's products through their life cycle. She's the manager of Worn Wear, which aims to reduce the environmental impact of Patagonia clothing by helping people extend the life of their garments through repair, reuse, and responsible recycling. She also teaches in the Environmental Studies Department at the University of California, Santa Barbara. Eileen Fisher created her first collection in 1984 with $350, and today the company has 1,200 employees and 60 freestanding stores. Eileen became concerned with sustainability early on and hired her first director of social consciousness 20 years ago this year. But in 2015, she really put a line in the sand with the Vision 2020 statement, which makes a pledge to transparency and lays out a 5-year plan for achieving sustainability in the areas of materials, color, water, carbon, and conscious business practices. So please welcome Nellie Cohen.
Wonderful. Thank you so much for having all of us here. It's quite an honor to be up here. Patagonia has always been a huge fan of Eileen Fisher, so we're always excited to be on the stage together. For those of you in the audience who might not be familiar with Patagonia, we're a privately held company located in Ventura, California, about 2 hours north of LA in a pretty funky beach town. We were founded in 1973 by Yvonne Chenard, and we originally were a hard goods company. We forged iron climbing equipment in a blacksmith shop before we got into clothing. And this is our mission statement. You can read it yourself there. But I think I always like to start every presentation with it because I know most companies have a mission statement, but the degree to which this truly is our guiding principle at Patagonia, I feel is unique and carries throughout decision-making from weekly meetings to higher level strategic decisions at Patagonia. Today, we are a global company. We sell clothing, a whole surf line of wetsuits, surfboards, fishing line with Tenkara rods, and we also have a food line called Patagonia Provisions. So along the way, we've carried a tradition of sort of being an accidental business, but doing right by the environment at the same time. And this is just a brief timeline of some of those decisions that we've made along the way to give you a little background about what we've done. So initially, when we were a climbing company, why shouldn't we, but Yvonne and his friends were making gear for each other. And in doing that, they realized that the type of gear they were making was actually scarring the rocks. And essentially overnight, he decided that that wasn't an acceptable way to have business and switched to an idea and a concept called clean climbing, where you could use removable hardware that would leave no trace at all on the rocks. Second time we did that was in the early 90s when we realized after employees in our Boston store became sick due to the off-gassing of formaldehyde from our cotton products that we needed to switch to organic cotton. And although that process was not overnight, it was a full-fledged effort. So along the way, we've decided to do things that might have seemed outlandish or off the beaten path of business, but it's always worked out well. A couple more recent examples of that. In 2013, we figured out with a partnership with a company called Ulex how to make a neoprene-free wetsuit using a plant called Waiuli that requires basically no water, pesticide use. And after launching that product line, we also gave away the information to any other person in the surf company, in the surf industry, who wanted to also make a Ulex wetsuit. So those are just some of the environmental efforts that we've made along the way. But with all that, what we've learned through our research is that we can do a lot of things right in the product life cycle, and even employing best practices along the way, from this production of fiber choice to telling our customers how to launder things properly and eventually to recycling them. But ultimately, it's this idea of life extension where we see the greatest potential for the reduction in environmental impacts. And this is some research out of the UK from a group called WRAP, showing that actually over 9 months of extended use, you can reduce the carbon, water, and waste footprints of a garment by 20 to 30% each, which is significantly higher than anything else you can do along that product life cycle. Which brings me to what my work within this company, which is wornwear. And what we're trying to do with wornwear is build on the premise of, yeah, we've built these great garments, we've done our best to reduce the necessary harm required to make them, but ultimately when we put them out into the world, this has to be a shared responsibility between Patagonia and its customers to take mutual responsibility for the stuff that we're making and they're purchasing. So through wornwear, it's really an educational program around repairing, reusing, and eventually, when all else left out, recycling products at the end of their useful life. And the way we're trying to talk about that is to raise a generation and maybe a society, if you will, of owners of products as opposed to consumers of products. An owner being a person who can take full responsibility for the stuff that they purchase through fixing and proper care and repair, and a consumer being a person who maybe purchases blindly, uses it, and tosses it without any consciousness. And I just wanted to share a little background of how we got here, because it's a long story, and I think this will tell it more quickly.
Wormwear began with recycling. We figured out we could melt down our garments when they were done and leave more. Then we told you not to buy more. Reuse your stuff. It's got a lot of life left. Then came the stories we wear. They gave us a reason to keep our gear in action for generations to come. Then we realized the wear was so important, we traveled the country doing it. Now, we want to buy your gear back, so it doesn't sit in your closet. So when someone who needs it can buy it. For not much money, because it's used. Or as we like to call it,
So that's what we've been up to for the last 10 years. Got it all? But really, so we did start with this idea of recycling. And what we found out, a couple things. First, we didn't get a lot of stuff back. Our stuff lasts way too long. And secondly, it's along those lines of it lasting too long, is it's really hard to recycle. In fact, most of our stuff, there isn't really a formal recycling stream for it. So we decided there's a lot of other stuff that should be happening before it's time to recycle. And today, our recycling program primarily looks like an upcycling program. So this is a picture of my friend Grace wearing a scarf made out of actually products like the one I'm wearing today, a down jacket. And it's sewn by Natalie Channon's team of women sewers through Alabama Channon in a great partnership that way. Yeah, small world. So the first thing we want to do, say if it's broke, fix it. and help reclaim this active repair that seems to be sort of slowly vanishing. Clothing's become almost an entertainment option as opposed to an investment. So it's so easy to just throw something away when we could be fixing it. And let's just start this a little bit here. So this is some footage from our Worn Wear tour that was mentioned in the video. We travel the country now repairing gear for people for free, any brand.
Team, and it was my best friend and myself, and we spent 5 days on it, and it never came off of me. About 4 years ago, I gave up being a guide, and I became a farmer. And so this is the last relic piece of my guiding days. This is my favorite.
Yeah. So, tours are wonderful, but to be honest, they're not necessarily a scalable change that we can create. I can throw some metrics up there, but at the end of the day, we're one vehicle and 6 people traveling around the country a few months out of the year. And we have attracted quite a few people. I think we've had, 7, well, we're actually on the road as we speak right now visiting colleges. So, we might have touched 100,000 people, which hopefully has a ripple effect. But we feel like it's time for us to take it to the next level and try to do something truly scalable within this circular economy concept. And so that's when we come in with our next Worn Wear mantra, if you will, which is better than new. And so as the video mentioned earlier, we're going to be launching a program very similar and inspired in a lot of ways by Fisher Found, Eileen Fisher's program, to take back clothing from our customers, clean it, and resell it. We're doing this through a partnership. Our back-end partner is a company called Yurtle that we made an investment with through our in-house venture capitalist fund, Tin Shed Ventures, in 2014. So we've been thinking about it for a little while, and we're really excited to be executing in a few weeks on this. This is a little glimpse into what it will look like. So, why do this and take this next step? And is it going to cannibalize our current customer base? And there's so many questions that come up. I think we'll talk about this a little bit in the discussion. I won't get here. But we see a lot of value in taking an aspirational brand like Patagonia and creating an opportunity to let people into our brand that otherwise couldn't afford it, which is wonderful to a marketing team. But to a sustainability team, what that also means is that you're displacing the sale of a lesser made, lesser quality, less responsibly made garment and replacing it with an item that was made, to the best of our ability at that time, and keeping it in use. So there's not any more damage incurred in the environment, basically, to put it back out there again. And then in turn, we also are creating an even higher statement around the quality of our garments by saying that there's a guaranteed buyback price for every piece of Patagonia that you make pending its condition, which I think is really a change to a traditional business model of putting stuff out there and forgetting about it, to actually think about how that will come back into our hands and how we can continue to retain the highest level of value of those items. And then just in the last few minutes here, I think one of the things that excites me the most about Worn Wear is some of the changes that I see happening internally, and how we, in various places within the company, I'm starting to see some influences that Worn Wear has created within our own teams. And this is sort of a pet project that I want to share with you guys. You've probably, if you've ever heard of Patagonia or seen Patagonia, there's a few products that are very iconic to the brand. And one of those is called the Snap Tee pullover. I think we've been making it for 25 or 30 years. And this is the silhouette that you see here in it. But what's unique about this colorway up here is that this is these are all colored through a consolidation process of pulling in leftover fabric across our line, so men's, women's, kids, baby prints, into one factory, and then remade using this iconic silhouette. So we know people will like it, which is always good when you're piloting a program. But it's mixed up. It's using what we have left. And these are just launching this week on our college tour. And when somebody buys it, they actually get to pick out the snaps that they put on it. So every piece becomes unique and personalized, just trying to help to build that relationship to the stuff that we are purchasing. And I mean, if we just go a little bit more broad, I think I touched on this earlier, but you know, Warmwear really is out to try to create the society of product owners, you know, not consumers. The global apparel market is worth $3 billion, I think. $3 trillion, excuse me, 3 trillion, whole order of magnitude off there. $3 trillion. But, you know, a large percentage of that business is run by this idea of fast fashion, which, again, I'll say it, I don't know where fashion became an idea of entertainment, where a shirt costs less than, you know, a coffee at Starbucks. And, you know, our homes are exploding with things. And I don't think any of us are really that much happier for the situation that we live in. So we're just trying to highlight the opportunity to invest in something of quality and keep it in use longer and focus on the stories and experiences that you have in those things. And this is one of my favorite quotes from the Pope, actually. And I think reusing stuff becomes this way of honoring the fact that there's a lot of us on this earth, and we can actually create space for all of us to live happily with equal opportunity to the resources that we all need. But it's going to take, you know, a nod from those of us consuming the most of them to think a little bit more thoughtfully about how we do that. And the last quote I have is from Yvonne, and I'll read it, and I think it sums up what we're trying to do, is that we want to reach an economy that doesn't rely on insatiable consumerism as its engine, an economy with less duplication of consumer goods, less throwaway and close your eyes. And we don't know exactly how it will play out, but we do know that it's time for all corporations to think about it and act.
Thank you, Nellie. Thank you. It's an honor to be here at the museum. We're proud to support your exhibit here, the Scraps exhibit. As Nellie said, we've been involved in a lot of projects and inspired each other, and so I think that's a really important thing in the fashion industry, which isn't known for doing that kind of thing. We tend to keep our secrets. But in this area, it's really important to share. So anyway, I started the company in 1984, and at that point, I was really just trying to solve a problem, and I couldn't find clothes I liked. I always wanted to take the stuff, I wanted them simpler, and I didn't like to throw clothes away. I wanted things to last. And I went to Japan and I saw the kimono, and I was very inspired by the shape and the fact that people wore only that shape for 1,000 years in Japan, and I wanted to understand what made that shape so timeless, because I didn't like to throw things away. And at the same time, I was fascinated by natural fibers, so that was a kind of an inherent part of what the clothes were about. So fast forward to today, and I want to tell you a little bit about this project. But just to say that over the years, we've begun to realize that we're a company that's more than just clothes, and that we have a huge opportunity to make a difference and make an impact in the world. And so today we think of ourselves as a circular economy. We think of ourselves as being responsible for our product from the very beginning, from the seeds all the way through to the very end, to the recycling and the upcycling of the products that we're doing. We also think of ourselves as our new kind of deepened mission. We say that we grow clothes because we like to think of ourselves as growing natural clothes and doing it organically and responsibly. We say that we grow people because over the years we've seen the huge opportunity through working together that we can grow our employees, but also make a difference in the lives of the people working in our supply chain. And then we say we grow business for good because, as I said, we see the enormous opportunities to have impact. I ran into someone earlier who said they were, you were talking about it, about the girls who code, that project. And even though I can't tell you so much about that project, I can tell you that we often do events in our stores. We use that opportunity to raise money for different charities, and we'll often give 10% of the proceeds of that day to a nonprofit or a charity of our choosing, usually to support women and girls, because we think we need it most. But so that's how you ended up in the store around that, or heard about that particular event. But it's just a way we see that customers want to come on the days that we're supporting something that feels like a good cause. So anyway, as I was saying, we see ourselves as a kind of holistic company trying to take responsibility for the whole, start to finish. Going backwards to about 7 or 8 years ago now, we decided to open a store in Irvington near our home offices. And we wanted to open a store that would be a laboratory, a kind of a testing ground for ideas we were playing with, selling samples and things like that. And Siggy, who's in the office, in the audience here today, wave, Siggy, because they might want to ask you questions. Because sometimes others in the company do better at answering questions than I do, because they're actually, on the front line in the midst of the work. But Siggy came up with this idea when we were going to open the lab store that, people were wearing vintage clothes, and our clothes would be great vintage clothes. And at the same time, all of our employees were starting to accumulate closets full of clothes and getting a little bit overwhelmed. Personally, I had a whole room full of clothes too. So it's hard to throw away things that are timeless, or that, in 5 years or 10 years you might go like, I really want that pant that I wore 10 years ago. And actually I was thinking about that today. There's one, anyway, that I wish I hadn't thrown away. No, I didn't throw it away. I gave it to the Green Eileen, which is now the Fisher Found project. But anyway, so we opened the lab store. I was a little nervous that with starting to bring back the old clothes, because I thought we were going to see all kinds of mistakes and things that I didn't want to see or didn't want to remember, And actually, what was really interesting is that we had this little section in the back of the store, and the customers were going back there just as if it was current product, mixing it with the current things, and they were happy because they got a better price on some of those pieces, and it just was so validating about the quality of the clothes, and that they lasted, and that the concept that actually still worked, so that pieces didn't go out of style. That was fascinating. The idea actually worked. So anyway, let's see. What else were we trying to do? Okay, so let me see what happens next here. This is only the second time I've ever done a PowerPoint presentation in my whole life. So when I think Susan or someone said we could bring slides, I was like, oh, slides. Gee, I don't know if we have any. Must have some pictures somewhere. So anyway, as we were starting to do this recycling program, we began to take the clothes back from customers just in a couple of the stores, just to kind of get it off the ground. And And so then we thought, well, we want to let all of our customers know. So we did this big ad campaign, I don't know what year it was exactly, maybe 5 or 6 years ago. Okay. So anyway, 4 years ago, something like that. And wonderful. That was very exciting. People really supported the program. People brought their clothes back. Well, they also got $5 for each garment. And what was interesting is that it forced them to clean their closets. And cleaning your closet, oh, such a great thing to do. And when you do it, you shop more consciously. You know what you really wore, and you know what you really loved, and you know what you might need to replace. And you know what's fell in the back of the closet and you just never wore, and so you bring that learning in when you shop. So you shop more consciously. So then another problem arose. We found that we could only sell about half of the clothes because many of the clothes had stains or spots or maybe moth holes, and they needed repair, but they needed more than just repair. So we were just kind of getting more and more overwhelmed, but we committed to not putting these clothes in the landfill. So we just, over the years, started accumulating warehouses full. We had, I think, 3 or 4 warehouses. We didn't even know how many clothes we had. And it was, anyway, you get just a little taste of this. It was quite crazy. But meantime, the program was doing really well. We were selling, to date, we've sold like over $10 million worth of clothes. We've donated $2 million to women and girls projects, and we employ 40 people with just the recycled product, and which means, we can employ people without making more stuff, without creating more harm. Even though, as I said, our holistic responsibility, and you heard earlier a little bit about, maybe we didn't talk about that, our Vision 2020 and all of the sustainability work we're doing up front, around organic, and we got a little taste. That's not what we're talking about today. I can go down another rabbit hole, but let's stay with this one. So we have this big mountain, we call them mountains of clothes. And so we decided that simultaneously we wanted to do a project with the CFDA. And we came up with this idea. We wanted to share the work we were doing internally around sustainability. We wanted the next generation of designers to think like, to have the information that we had, not to have to start over and to learn whatever we could teach them. So we decided that we would do this project, and we partnered with the CFDA, and we gave an award to 3 designers. Do we have one of our designers back there? Is Tess back there? We have a winner back there. Tess, raise your hand. And we have Cynthia and Tess in the back of the room. They know more about this project than I do. These 3 young women won the award. We put this contest out to 70 schools around the country, and all 3 came from Parsons. I don't know. I must be doing something right there. Anyway, so the project was partly we wanted to help them learn about our project, but also then we thought, well, let's give them this mountain of clothes and see if what they can do with it. So they're incredibly creative, and I was going to bring a video to show in the middle of this, but I was afraid I was going to go on too long. So this is an incredible project, and they're wearing some of the garments. Actually, what do I want to say? I'll show you a few. Okay, so here's just a little taste of some of the beautiful pieces they created. They're just really, really stunning. On the right is a piece actually Tess did, I think. She takes plant parts of plants and uses them to over dye clothes, and the piece in the middle is a sweater chopped piece cut up and sewn together, and the piece on the left is actually a kimono shape. So the concept continues. And I think to take special note of this piece because it's made on the Felt Loom, and it's a different. It's not knit. It's not woven. It's felted, but it's a different. It's a different. Well, I'll tell you. It's pretty interesting. So just take a special note of that particular thing there, and so then we took their amazing project, and they part of the work was to create a beautiful, scalable, and profitable line of clothing out of our recycled clothes. So they created a line of 500 pieces, and each one was different. They were like small runs, but because when you're cutting up old clothes, you don't really have exactly the same pieces. So you stack all your linen pieces and cut them, and each piece is a little bit different. So even though you might have the same design, each piece has a different quality about it. So it's actually slightly different. So ultimately, you have one-of-a-kind pieces. But it's scalable because it works within a kind of a system, so it's very interesting. So then we did this fun pop-up shop out in Brooklyn, and we're really excited about the results and how much people loved these products. And so we decided to take the store next door. So, so we'll be opening that store in September, August, if all goes well. The other thing we did was we started to think, how are we going to actually scale this and produce this? And so we started thinking maybe we needed to have a little factory. So I have no pictures of the factory, sorry. But the other thing that was happening simultaneously, so we had an internal team while the trio, these group of young designers was working on this one project. They were working right next to, in our makerspace in Irvington, they were working right next to Siggy, who raised her hand earlier, you met, who was actually the very first Eileen Fisher employee. Long time ago, 30-some years, whatever, a long time ago. Anyway, that's I could take it down another rabbit hole. We could tell a lot of stories, but we won't go there. We were talking about how Siggy and I met in James Rosenquist's loft, which is interesting because he just passed away, I think, this past week. So sort of funny. Siggy was the assistant to his assistant. So, but I stole her, and we started working together. But anyway, Siggy found this. Siggy was also kind of, working in the lab store, running the lab store, and kind of playing with these recycles and creating some workshops. And we were doing knitting and unraveling sweaters and sweater chop things, and in the lab store. And so Siggy simultaneously was thinking, what are we going to do with all this stuff? And she found this felt loom, an artisanal felt loom, and I didn't know what it was. And she said to me, Eileen, I need $20,000 to buy this felt loom. It's going to solve, we're going to be able to put everything, we're going to be able to recycle everything, that we have. And I was like, well, for $20,000 worth a try, we have a lot of stuff. So sure enough, this felt loom, I wish I also had a film here where I could show you how it operates, but just to give you a taste. People, they cut up the pieces and it runs through the loom, and it kind of punches the materials together, and they run it back and forth. They run it through the loom. I don't know how many times, 5, 6, 7, 8, I don't know. Siggy can tell you more if you're specifically interested in the details. So then, let's see, where do we go next? So this is maybe the first or second piece that came off of the felt loom. Just cutting up the scraps and, actually I have it in my home. So, and then you can see we're making pillows. You can see how over time more sophisticated the process became, the understanding of what this machine could do, and all the possibilities and the beautiful things that it does. So then trying different things, pretty interesting. And that's why I wanted to call your attention to the Kimono Coat, because it was made on this Felt Loom. And it was interesting because I love when designers work next to each other and then they inspire each other. It's very interesting. And here was we were attempting to make rugs, and we were making pillows and covers for things. And then we found we got all twisted up with labeling and we couldn't sell rugs at certain sizes, and it got really complicated. And we were putting the rugs in the showroom, in our offices and everything. And we found that they didn't hold up that well in commercial spaces. They'd be beautiful for homes, but, not quite rugged enough. So Siggy said, well, why don't we just hang them on the wall? So we started hanging them on the wall, and people are saying, oh my goodness, it's art. It's amazing. So, and it's just, the possibilities are just endless. Sorry, my photographs just don't do justice to these gorgeous pieces. This was an event we did with Fast Company, talking about our whole recycling project. And we really just want to share what we're doing so people can learn and continue, because this is really important work. So this piece, the one that was behind us, is actually another problem solving. It was very interesting. We had these, at the end of making these pieces on the Felt Loom, there were these big bins of the little scraps that were created by cutting all these pieces. And so, I don't know, someone said, it might have been Siggy or someone else there in the collective group, I don't remember, I don't know, I wasn't there, but said, let's see what happens if we put the scraps in, with the scraps of the scraps, and see if we can make something. And a lot of people think this is one of the most beautiful pieces, and it's just made from the scraps of the scraps. So I think the point is, it's, there's a lot of, I like to think of the creativity in, solving problems, trying to solve problems. And Lee Edelcourt, I don't know if any of you know, Lee Edelcourt came to visit the other day, and she, literally choked up to see these pieces because they really are that beautiful. And she said, it's so interesting that that it takes trash, or it takes, I can't remember how she said it, to kind of get this creative process, that it's actually more creative. We've gotten kind of in our design process a little bit stuck. It's got to be mass producible, and it's got to work in a certain way. And in our company, we have a pretty rigid, not that rigid, but kind of rigid design philosophy, and we have to kind of work within it. So, but it's like, this is all garbage, so we can just do anything. We can try anything. So it's sort of like, kind of finding the gold in the garbage. So, okay, so good enough now. Questions? Okay, I hate these kinds of things. But sorry, I want my photographs. This piece is much more beautiful in real life. Okay.
So, of all the things you can do in the sustainability game as a company, taking back used clothing seems like the most unpredictable, chaotic thing you could do. Were either of you really prepared for it? Did you have conversations about that before you made the commitment to do it?
About the chaos? No, my biggest concern was that I wasn't going to like what I saw, that I was going to be embarrassed about things that I, had long, done so many years ago that
the
I
ultimate
didn't
reckoning.
like. Right.
Getting back your clothes from the 80s.
But I think kind of like for me with like starting the business, I always kind of stumble into things. And sometimes I say, God, if I had any idea what I was getting into, if I really had to stop and think, you know, how many people and how much responsibility and what I was actually getting into. I don't know. It's a good thing I didn't do that. And I would say the same thing probably for this, although it's just too much fun. I think this project has been a lot of fun, so that is worth it.
I'm sitting here and watching as we're about to launch, inviting everybody to take all their, to bring us all their stuff back. So I don't know about that. I mean, I can speak to it a little bit from the repairs side of things that after 2011, when we did the Don't Buy This Jacket ad, we started to see, double-digit growth in repair demand. And so we've been seeing some of these things come back from the 80s, and that part's pretty cool. But we have a hard time keeping pace with that demand, of course.
So both Eileen Fisher and Patagonia are known for using very, very high-quality fabrics. And all of the approaches that you've discussed so far, repair, reuse, and remaking garments, depend on that foundation of quality. Other companies, if I may say cheaper brands, are investing heavily in regenerated fiber technologies, shredding, basically. Do you think that that is a viable solution?
Well, for them, maybe. I don't know. I mean, for me, it just makes me sad, to shred things. And because that's why I love the Felt Loom, and I love the cutting and chopping and remaking and color block pieces and fixing and all of those things, because you keep the integrity of the material. And when you start with quality materials, then sometimes they even get more amazing. So it's really interesting when you start combining them and all. So, but I think for the fast fashion kind of group, I think that's what they have to do. And so I think, there are ways to do that I'm sure are meaningful. It's not the area we're working in, but, people recycle polyester and all those things. We actually make coats out of recycled polyester. So, there are, we know these guys in Taiwan, they're called Mini Whiz. They're kind of amazing. And they built a museum out of recycled bottles. It's beautiful. It's amazing.
The building itself?
Well, the outside of the building, I'm not really sure about how the structure works. Siggy could answer that if you have a question later, because she's really close to those guys. They're great.
I think, we've each have these companies that have found solutions that fit who we are as brands. And I think that actually these fast fashion companies are really, really well situated to execute a closed loop model because they have ample retail stores. God knows they have volume. And if they can design products for recyclability and they have the funding to help these R&D projects that are sort of in these up-and-coming recycling potential solutions that are in R&D phases, if they can fund that and they can give them the supply of stuff, then that's a great model, I think. But I don't think in reality a fast fashion model is a legitimate business model if we paid the true cost of natural resources.
Right, because even if you can recover all of the polyester, you're not recovering the water and the energy and the human labor and everything else that went into it, along with the raw materials. Right.
Right. That's why I like to think that companies should be responsible for the whole, for all of their environmental and social impacts. So that's, but I think would be really hard for those companies to do. But I think that they could do, even upfront, they have more resources, so they could invest in closed loop processes in the beginning. But still, it's energy. I don't know. It's not a business I study too much. So, but I also think the consumer. I think not so much fast fashion, but in general, if consumers play a role in terms of just being less, like buying less, and. Well, I would say buy better, but then that not to be elitist, but that good things last.
Is it a problem for you that you're not high enough volume to work in, like polyester recycling, for example? Do you have to be a very high volume business to get into that? I don't know anything about the polyester recycling.
Yeah, no, I mean, and not that I know the back end polyester commodity pricing and can quote them for you, but I think, you know, kind of I was alluding to this a little bit before that if we paid that true cost for polyester, virgin polyester should be so much more expensive than recycled polyester, but we don't account for the damage done to extract the oil that goes into the polyester. I don't think I'm totally answering your question exactly there, but
That's okay.
okay.
So what is the biggest challenge that you face with your garments that you take back? Is it deconstructing the garments? Is it blended yarns? Is it lycra, spandex?
That's a good start.
Check. Yeah.
I mean, for us, I still think the mountains of clothes, just keeping up with the mountains of clothes and getting the process moving so that we can actually make a really serious dent and really in the product that we have and move it out more quickly. The other thing that we're struggling with a lot of things. Another one is just the actual time and energy involved in the preparation, the sorting. We have a huge space and so much complexity in sorting all the many different fabrics, and then when you're going to actually do a production, cutting, and one of the things that sort of shocked me the other day, I was talking with our kind of head of manufacturing who's handling the tiny factory too, and I was concerned. I thought the biggest cost was the sewing because it's a more complicated sewing than our simple pieces. He said, no, we can sew the pieces for maybe $15 a garment, but the bigger cost, someone told me, is it's about $45, the sorting and prep, cutting and prep for that to get the product ready to sew. So that was a bit shocking to me. We have to get that cost in some manageable way, mechanize it to some extent, but still it's not easy because you're dealing with all these different products.
And then how does that impact the pricing? And that it's because there's so much labor that goes into the sorting and everything else that it's like the recycled product should be more expensive than the virgin product, so to speak. So I imagine that's something that you confront.
But actually what's interesting is what I've been looking at, thinking about the business model, because I love this kind of intersection between art and design and business, because I'm a problem solver, So I like thinking that when we make virgin product, we have to pay for the fabric. And so it's quite expensive, actually, because we use pretty good quality fabric. And so in this case, we're capturing the fabric that's about to be wasted, and it doesn't actually, the actual cost of goods is not there. It's in the labor and the processing. So we're actually giving people jobs,
Right.
And so that's a good thing.
Yeah, and I think we have kind of a different take back methodology, and we were talking a little bit earlier about this today, because you guys collect everything in a single point source and then sort it, and then we do the opposite and collect in 3 distinct categories of stuff people send us for repairing, stuff they send for reuse, and then one they send for recycling. So it's an interesting. We're each creating our own bed, I guess, to sleep in. I don't know which they each have their advantages and disadvantages. I mean, on the recycling front, the challenge we have is that we set out to make these incredibly durable garments, and then you have to take them apart. And so if somebody wants like $1 million ideas, like set up a factory for deconstructing garments. If there's any students out there who want to do that, we'll pay you. We do that all in-house right now. Mm-hmm. And it's challenging, it's hard, and recyclers we're at their whim because we're small, and so that's a challenge on that side for sure, is deconstruction. I would say that's the toughest for us. We don't have probably quite as many material blends, but that's a huge challenge too, especially if you're talking about a municipal recycling stream across multiple brands and uses too. Like, how do you identify each fiber type and blend thereof?
So you say that these blended yarns are a problem. Has that impacted your choice of fabrics as a designer? Do you try to avoid Are you thinking about trying to avoid
Well,
the use of Lycra or blends?
Well, we're not quite at the eliminating the Lycra thing, but we're working. But we're working a lot with not using rayon because we're finding we're struggling to recycle it, and it doesn't go in the Felt Loom, and.
If it doesn't go in the Felt Loom, it's out.
It also pills, but it happens to be our customer's favorite fabric, so we're struggling with that conflict. And we've struggled with it on the front end around our Vision 2020 project, and struggling about rayon because rayon is cellulose, and this is one of the big problems in the industry, is that cellulose is sold in bulk. And products that are sold in bulk are harder to trace. And so we are demanding traceable rayon. So cellulose comes from trees. And it's, in some cases, unknown whether it comes from the rainforest, from cutting down the rainforest. So in Indonesia, that's where a lot of the cellulose comes from. And so we are committed to completely only traceable rayon. Pretty much we're mostly there, but by 2020, absolutely. So that's part of our Vision 2020. So there's the Lycra. I don't know where we are with Lycra by 2020. I don't know about that. And Siggy and others could speak to the products with Lycra in them and what we're actually able. I know that when we remake pieces, we can use the Lycra pieces, and we can, so that instead of, the problem with blends is that you can't melt them down. Right. And so that if we're not melting them down, it's not the same problem. Right. So we have less concern about that, as long as we can find a way to reuse them or remake them.
Okay, so as a consequence of your commitments, you are now the owner of a recycling facility. And Patagonia now owns the largest repair facility in the country. And I can't imagine there were that many models for that kind of thing. And I wonder if you could talk a little bit about how you designed the facility. Did you work with municipal recycling centers? Did you look at other models for that? My very first job was doing repairs at the dry cleaner. So I have something like that in my mind from my
I'm
16,
sure we have an opening in Reno where we have it. Well, I mean, it's a little bit, I think this is another kindred spirit between Patagonia and Eileen Fisher that we sometimes stumble into these things and then figure it out. So I'd love to sit here and say, oh yeah, we designed this recycling facility and it's lean manufacturing. It's none of that. I think in 2009 or 10, we employed 12 people. Today it's 75. We churned out 45,000 repairs last year. We are the largest repair facility in North America. Second, largest outdoor gear. Second, there's a military factory that does more repairs than us. So very hard to compete with the U.S. government on numbers. So I think thus far we've sort of tried to solve this by throwing bodies at it. And now we really have to solve the efficiency equation. And how do you create streamlined processes around an art and a craft? Because each repair is unique. There's, of course, repeatable processes, but at the same time, literally each one really is unique. There's been different. It's been interesting. We wrote a couple years ago. We wrote about 40 guides for people to repair their Patagonia stuff, and you can check them out. They're all free. Yeah. And we started to write how to replace the main zipper in a down sweater, and we realized I think we had maybe somewhere between 4 to 6 constructions over 15 years of a product, and they open up differently, and we learn things along the way. And so while we have to clean up that back end, another one of these sort of internal influence projects that I'm really excited about is this rating system that our quality department actually runs, where we rate every newly revised style now for every season, and we rate it according to the design principles that we wrote in Let My People Go Surfing, the book that Yvonne wrote. And what's really cool about this is when it comes to rating the repairability of it, we actually have a person from our repairs department sit there and rate it. And it really knocks the socks off our designers. They're like, oh, really? That's going to be that hard? It's like, yeah, it's going to be that hard. And it'll take a while, with design cycles to see those changes in the line, but we are really trying to design for repairability. So we're kind of approaching it from both sides. How do you triage and how do you look forward to and work out in the future?
Yeah. Two things. Well, I wanted to just say something because in terms of the design, it's what you see from the back end can inform the design process. And so I know that our recycling group and designers there will go in and talk with the designers in the company, and we're trying to think about what that means, design for reuse, remaking, and that kind of thing. So I haven't heard the reports and what they're finding and what they're talking about, but just setting up that line of communication is a really good start. But back to your first question around the recycling operation facility, not realizing we were stumbling into that. Pretty much we did it the way I do everything, which is do one thing and see what happens, and then it sort of informs the next thing. So we, opened a little tiny, we took one room in the building where the factory currently is, and I don't remember how big it was. It was pretty small. And we were doing repairs there, and we do repairs, not to the extent quite that you do, but we definitely do repairs. So we were doing repairs there, and we were, starting to take in the clothes. And then I just remember going to that room one time, and I was terrified that pile of clothes, because they weren't even on shelves at the time. There were a whole bunch of them that weren't even on shelves. They were just throwing the things in because there were so many. It was so overwhelming. But then it was like, oh my God, we need shelves. we need to get a bigger space, and it just kind of kept going like that. And then it was really just recently that we opened the tiny factory. So we've opened in Irvington, a space that's 20,000 square feet, and we have a recycle store there, and we have our recycling operation, and then we have a whole storage area, and then we have now the tiny factory and a design studio where we're, designing and remaking things. So that's just been opened, and so there was a little bit of formal support for that. I know that Cynthia, who's in the back, might be able to answer other people's questions, but she took a trip out to see the renewal project. I don't know, and I think you came back saying, I think we're ahead of them. I can't remember what you said exactly, Cynthia, but and then she hired some people called Lean to help to sort of organize, some of the operation. But we didn't. There's not a lot of models to follow.
And has it been difficult to find skilled labor?
It's not something we've struggled as much as one would think with it, and we kind of have a graduated training program too, so we can bring people up, and people are really excited to sew. Like it's one of the things that just warms my heart is like the interest, especially in younger people too, of sewing. And one of my favorite things to see at a one-wear event is there's like a child. I've seen it all in Europe. I've seen it in the U.S. maybe 10 to 12 years old, and they'll sit in front of a one-wear seamstress there and watch all day. Like it's like magic what happens. So,
and actually, what's cool about it is that that they're actually sewing different things, and it's not like mass production where you're just like nose to the grindstone sewing all day long. But it has a more creative feel about it and more interesting because it's always changing. Oh, there's another new fabric, and oh, look at that, look at this one, look at this. So it's something really interesting. And also our sewers, we have 5 sewers, and we're training too, and sometimes they get to spend time on the Felt Loom, so that's another fun thing to be engaged in. So. Yeah.
So you both seem to be feeling out the terrain of selling used clothing alongside new merchandise, and both working with Yurtle, I understand. Can you talk a little bit about the ups and downs of that?
not of Yurtle specifically, but of selling used clothing suddenly?
Yeah, well, we've been selling it in our company stores, which are they're almost outlet, but not exactly. They're sort of in between because they have some current product and some recycles and some last year product. And that's been going really well. It seems to just work perfectly. So, but we also kind of want to test the idea in some of our other stores because we really like the way it validates the concept. You know, it reminds people that the clothes are timeless. It also gives another customer who maybe can't afford the current product access to the product. And so we'll find a younger customer or a customer that, you know, is just needs the lower price point. And so that's nice to have more integration like that. But Yurtle is brand new, so we don't know yet. Well, I think both of our organizations are working with them. I'm kind of shocked that they're going to photograph every garment and put it online to sell it. I would go like, oh my God, that's not a successful business model, but they're doing it. They must find a way, so I don't know.
Hopefully it's successful.
Hopefully.
We invested in it, so hopefully it's going to work okay.
Well, no, it's great. It's just
But,
that how much time it takes to take a photograph. But
Just describe what it is for people who are...
Yeah, so Yurtle is a company that helps brands figure out a reuse strategy that works for them, and we are their first two clients. So you'll see them.
I see.
Oh, they didn't tell you that part. We're all
I'm that kind of funny business design person, so
yeah, we call it launch and learn. See what
launch
happens.
and learn.
Launch
There
and
you go.
learn.
That's good.
And that's kind of been it. Is like, I'll sit in meetings like, well, what's your forecast? I'm like, I don't know. I can't tell you. I pull data points from here and there because I am kind of like a math nerd, and I can't really give anything solid. We're really going to launch and learn and figure it out. We have about I think half the retail footprint that you guys have, and so it's always been a challenge for us to put Wornwear in stores. We did it in Portland for about 5 years, and it was a great learning opportunity there. Our Portland, Oregon store. But our stores tend to be in reclaimed buildings. They're odd spaces. They're small. They're beautiful, but they're not there's not a lot of extra space left. And, we really see it as like these products kind of have seen the light of day once. So it's time to let the new things, be exposed to people who want to shop them. So that's why we're interested in trying the e-commerce idea too. And that being said, it's accessible to anybody in the U.S., not just people who live near a Patagonia store who are already maybe in the family who can shop the sale. So we're really excited to see what happens.
The other thing you could do is we have two only Fisher found only recycled stores, and that's if you want to separate it. Because there's a concern. I know some of our business people were very concerned that if we put it in we call company stores, then people would buy that at a lower price than another piece from last year, maybe. And we didn't find necessarily that it was a problem. In the end, our sales continued to increase in those stores, so we don't know whether that's true or not. We haven't. That hasn't proven to be true. But you have
Good
to have
to
the
hear.
space. You're right that you have to have the space.
Yeah.
We wouldn't do it in any of our current smaller stores, but opening, funky.
I like that idea.
Yeah, yeah.
Well, it'll be interesting to
work.
see because we don't even have a forecast on what we're going to get from customers from our trade, what we call our trade-in process. So if we have an experience like you guys have, I'm not anticipating that much stuff. So I'll be pleasantly surprised, and then there might be an opportunity because we actually feel we're pretty inventory limited in this program. That's one of the challenges that we have. Yeah.
See, we have these customers that have like closets full of Eileen Fisher clothes, sort of like attics, which is kind of cool. But at some point, they're like, "Oh, I'm really glad you have this recycling program."
So you have mountains and you have molehills.
I don't even know what we're about to climb.
Yeah.
So how do you measure the impact of these initiatives of Fisher Found and the Wornwear?
Well, just to be frank, I put that slide up of things that Patagonia has done in the past, and we're so small that we're not going to legitimately move that sustainability meter. from a numbers standpoint. We're not going to, Patagonia's move to organic cotton didn't really necessarily do anything, but what I think, we serve, and maybe you feel the same way, is that we can be an incubator for ideas for the rest of the apparel industry. And so we're, really hoping that Wornwear, it's built into our business model, proves that there is a benefit to the bottom line of repair and reuse still, that it's not just a cost center for a company. So I think, while we can shrink our footprint and we can amortize the manufacturing impact by extending the life of the clothing we make, and, we can measure that to some extent, and we can measure engagement, and we can count repairs, and we can do all these things. But at the end of the day, it's going to be if we've inspired other companies to build a like program that works for them. That's our true measure of success.
Oh, well said. I agree with that, because we only take back currently, even with all the piles and mountains of clothes we have, is 2% of what we make a year. So we have a long way to go. And we have to make it move faster in order to even take twice as much. So it's a big deal. But if we can inspire others, I think that's meaningful, important.
I think in 10 years of recycling, again, I did this sort of math calculation one day. In 10 years of recycling, we recycle about 95 tons of stuff or something like that, and it equates to less than 2% of the weight of a average spring line in weight. So, I mean, it's not much.
All right. Well, I'm going to leave it there because I want to be sure to have time for some questions from the audience. So if anyone has a question, please raise your hand. The program is being both live streamed and videotaped, so please wait for the microphone before you ask your question. Suzanne is coming around right now.
Oh, thank you. Hi there. Quick question. Actually, I have two. One, is the office felt art for sale at all yet? That's the first question. And then the second question is, I know you guys are trying to influence and inspire other, potentially larger companies to get on board with the whole idea of being a little more eco-friendly and having a less of an impact on the environment, because you guys are smaller operations. But in addition to influencing, are any actions being taken to kind of push them further along, give them a gentle push, apart from being hey, we're doing this, why don't you do it?
I mean, I think some of the industry groups, like the Sustainable Apparel Coalition, that is creating these industry benchmarks, actually put some numbers to where we're at, and that it was even for us filling out the modules for that program in particular showed us that while we scored off the charts in this repair and reuse side, there were other parts of our company that we needed to pay more attention to, where we could learn from our fellows. So I think those industry programs are helpful in engaging all of us.
Yeah, there's quite a few, and again, I'm. It's not where I live in the company, so I know that there are a lot of connections with other companies and a lot of different mutual projects. People working on dye houses in China and together, and people working on. We worked. I don't know if we were almost involved in the wool project with you, that sustainable wool project, and I'm also part of an organization called the Fair Fashion Institute, and they gather CEOs of the large fashion companies, and they have liaisons, and they meet, and concretely what's coming out. I'm not, I can't actually speak specifically to all of that, but maybe others can in the organization. I'm thinking Rebecca McGee, but she's not here, is the liaison for our organization. So, and probably Cynthia and others here could answer better what else is happening in other companies. But the fashion industry is way behind, and I think consumers have to put pressure. And actually, one of the interesting things that is happening is that consumers are shopping less, and you can see stores closing, and I really think the companies that are ahead of the game on this and trying to really take responsibility are going to come out ahead, So I'm believing in that, and that's what I'm saying at the Fair Fashion Institute. I'm telling all the other CEOs we have to lead, we have to, try to change the industry because it desperately needs changing. I am just such a believer that there's a way to actually turn this industry into real force for good, that we can clean the water as we go. There are dye houses, there are factories that work like that. There are, factories operating on cleaner energy and things like that. There are much better ways to do this. So working together is really is the secret.
Hi.
Oh, the office felt art. You can talk to Siggy. It's not officially for sale, but if behind the scenes, a few people have some access.
Hi. Thank you so much. It's just very inspiring to hear both of you, and I think it's great. But I have a question, two questions. First of all, what about bamboo because it was very popular for a while and now it isn't, and I just have a feeling that maybe it's difficult to work with as far as that goes. I know it's used in flooring and everything, but in fabric, I'm not so sure. And the other thing is any of this available to consumers online? Or you're not far enough advanced with that, or what?
You're talking about the upcycled, the pieces that we were showing? Not yet, but in our Brooklyn store when we open in August. And we're going to do some pop-ups, I think, this summer. Isn't that right, Cynthia? Am I right about that? Cynthia?
Just in Brooklyn?
Probably not just in Brooklyn. I don't know if Cynthia can. You need a mic, Cynthia, if you're going to answer that question.
Hi, this would be a perfect moment to plug some events that we have coming up for Eileen Fisher.
See? I thought about it. Right.
We have some Earth Day events coming up in our 10 Eileen Fisher stores at the end of April. In New York City, we'll have the Soho store. We'll have a little Fisher Found pop-up from April 20th to April 30th. And it will have reworn, renewed, and remade product, so you can go there to see the full line of everything Eileen has been talking about. And you will also be able to buy the reworn product on fisherfound.com after April 20th.
Oh, that's cool. I didn't know that. There you go. So we're taking pictures of all of it, Cynthia? Wow. That's impressive. Oh, goodness. Bamboo.
Yeah. We don't use bamboo because of the water issues around processing.
Oh, around bamboo.
We use Tencel.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, we use Tencel also. But we don't use bamboo, but I don't know why. Yeah. We use hemp and other good things.
I want just to like to say that I'm so proud that what both of you are doing. I had the opportunity of going to Montreal and spending some time there. My husband was working on a film, and we went to the Montreal World's Fair grounds and saw the Museum of Waste. And it was one of the most powerful things I've ever seen in my life. Because it is inside the Museum of Waste are these enormous columns. They're about 20 feet tall, and they're made of plexiglass. And in each column is a category. And one category is cell phones and electronics. Another category is toys. And another category is disposable clothes. And I went out of there and thought to myself, I have to not dispose of things anymore, and I have to think about how I can reuse things. And also the other thing I had to say is that how many times am I going to see somebody 10, 15 times in my life? And that I can keep recycling my own clothes and people have never seen them before, and that's really a nice thing to do. But I also just wanted to share that I was at the shop, the pop-up shop in Brooklyn, and I bought one of the tops that one of your student designers did. And I have to say the quality was so superb and so beautiful, and the hand of it is so great. And I just thank you for doing this, because it's really, I think, changing the fashion world and making people really rethink about things. I had to say these things. So anyway, bravo.
Well, thank
bravo
you.
to you too.
Thank you. Thank you.
I've been wearing Eileen Fisher clothes for a very long time, probably since you started to make them. And recycling Eileen Fisher clothes is a different thing. It's wonderful what you're doing in your factory, but everybody I know that wears them is recycling them either to their friends or they send them to Dress for Success, or they put them on eBay. But they have a long life before they ever get back to be made into felt or into anything else. And as I was listening to you, and you were talking about how to get them back, I think maybe you ought to put a little label in the back besides Eileen Fisher. Maybe the 5th owner will then send it back to you. Because the first owner definitely is not sending it back to you.
Well, that makes me feel so much better about the fact that we only get 2% of our clothes back.
Well, now you know.
There is, by the way, a little label in the clothes that says that we take them back. It's somewhere in the garment. Yeah.
Hi there. To go further on the consumer part of this, is there any plans in place to show consumers either in store? I actually took a course in Irvington with the poof.
Oh, you did?
What the poof was, for people who don't know this, these were courses that you were able to sign up for and make things out of recyclable clothing from Eileen Fisher. And the fun thing was it was almost like a small hassock. And it was, I still use it and I love it. And then those courses sort of stopped. Maybe I'm not looking at the right place. But what I was thinking of, we all have so many things and we all want to be creative, and it's nice to give the things back, but it's also nice to make the products our own.
Yes.
And I wondered if there was anything in place in either one of your companies, either in store or individually, or that might be happening.
Well, we've started and stopped that project twice. The first time we started, we were, Storm Sandy hit and we had to stop the project for a while. And then the second time, I don't know, we got tripped up, and so we are planning again. We just need to build out the staff to do that kind of thing. And we're planning when we open the Brooklyn store that we'll be doing it there. And we have, I don't know whether we're going to, we do some things in Irvington still, sewing and knitting classes in the lab store there. But we're still kind of learning how we can do this and make it so it doesn't, isn't too much work or doesn't cost us too much, so we can do it and within kind of the store context. So it's, but we'll get there because we're committed to it. We love the idea. And when people really want to do it, they want to use their hands. They want to create something and make it special.
We do something kind of similar through One where we call it DIY, and we bring out stuff that is broken, and we bring out the supplies to fix it, and people pick something out, and we show them how to fix it, and if they can fix it, they keep it for free. Yeah. So,
because we do a thing like that with unraveling sweaters. We let people unravel the sweaters, and then they get to take the yarn home. So
it's like the opposite of you break it, you buy it. You fix it, you buy it.
You fix it,
you break it, you keep it.
Yeah, that's good. I like that. That's very good.
So I think we have time for just one more question.
Up in the front here.
Up at the front.
Well, briefly, thank you very much for this program. As you were talking, I got to wondering if you do, or if you've tried to gather other companies into this. Are you the only two companies that do this? And is there a way to build a coalition? It seems to me like some of those large conglomerates, if they were willing to participate, could also put a lot of money into it and maybe you could get a snowball effect out of that.
Yeah. Well, I know we've had some people coming to look at our program. Yeah. I know people from Caring. Do you know that organization? They own Stella McCartney and several other. I think for us, the kind of things that we do that we would be good to get other people involved in, or at least share what we know so that people can maybe be inspired and interested to do it, would work only for the people making the high quality materials. So.
I think just logistically, it's really challenging to do it within our own walls. Not to say that we shouldn't or couldn't open that up. I've had in my time, I think, 2 inquiries of how from other companies saying how they could license wornwear. They wanted to license the concept, like as if I was going to send them a box of like, this is how you do it. I'm like, I wish I could. That would be amazing. If I could, I would. But there is another company in Oregon called the Renewal Workshop that we've worked with and shared some of our best practices with, and they are kind of serving as a plug-and-play solution for brands that want programs similar to Fisher Found and Wornwear. So I think that's what's great about that. It's a marketable solution, and it's creating jobs, and as you said, jobs without creating more stuff. And I think that's a great opportunity, especially for smaller brands. So I really congratulate them on that.
Yeah, it made me think that I heard once that some of these really kind of high-end design companies, and I'm not going to name any names, but they don't like to see their clothes down market, and so I've heard that they actually burn them. And not only all the costs involved in making them, but the carbon you're adding when you burn things, it just makes me want to cry. And I have a kind of a dream that we would have some big factory with lots of felt looms, and we would go to those companies and we would say, you don't have to do that. We promise we'll remake them, But again, it's far away for us. We're still trying to get ourselves up and running.
I think it will be really interesting to watch, because I think we think about business on, way beyond quarterly returns. We're thinking 10, 20, 100 years out. And so that's why service models make a lot of sense when you take that viewpoint. But if you're looking at, quarterly returns and you have to demonstrate an ROI on a $20,000 felt loom, you're not going to do it. And so I don't know where these programs will go. Will they become services that spin off out of our companies? I don't know. I don't think anybody knows what that landscape is going to look like. But I do think that moving towards a service portion of a business model is it's great for interacting with your customers. It's great from a business risk perspective as well, too. It insulates us from commodity pricing and other things. It's a very small business right now, but it has the potential to do something like that.
Yeah, maybe we're on the cutting edge of the future. No, it's exciting. I love the idea that with the remaking, that we make one of a kind, and to see these women sewing these one of a kind pieces, very exciting, because you really feel that you're recreating like a little business again, and everything becomes more almost more local in the way it could be made, and yes, things will cost more, but they might be more precious and more uniquely our own. So there's something interesting in moving away from the massive fashion, everybody wearing the same things, to how do we really uniquely find our own.
Great. Thank you, Eileen. Thank you, Nellie, so much for being here
Susan.
this evening. And thank all of you.